How to move email messages to another account. Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. If you're not getting my weekly emailed newsletter, Confident Computing, in your email box every Tuesday, you're missing out. You're missing out on answers to questions, solutions to problems that you may be facing every day. Visit askleo.com/newsletter to learn more and sign up today. So let's read today's question. It's one that I hear frequently. For years, my wife and I have used an email service with an annual fee. It has always met our needs, but there is probably no good reason to continue paying fees for what is available free elsewhere. However, even after pruning, we have hundreds of old emails stored on servers at our current service. Is there any way we can transfer the old emails to a new email provider in bulk? We would probably transfer to Gmail or Yahoo. So the answer, of course, is maybe. It depends. There's rarely a simple yes or no answer to any question that I get asked. So what I want to do is I want to show you a couple of potential solutions to the problem you're facing here, and some of the characteristics of when it might work and when it might not. So over here in Windows 10, I have two email accounts open in my web browser. I have my Hotmail account, askleo example at hotmail.com. And then in another tab, I have askleo test at gmail.com. So I have these two accounts ready to go. What I'm going to do for the purposes of this video is pretend that I am moving from Hotmail to Gmail. Now you can see that in my Hotmail, I have exactly one message. You clearly have hundreds. Just assume that this one message represents the hundreds of email messages you have. They'll all get moved. I just needed to weed out all the spam that shows up at this account before showing it to you. And you can see that even this message is technically spam, but it's at least an example message. So option number one is import. It would be nice if you could import your messages directly from one account to another. And as it turns out, in Gmail, you can do something like that. So if you're moving to Gmail, if you're planning on Gmail being your new account, your new user interface, this is one option. Hit the gear in Gmail, see all settings, and then in Accounts and Import, you'll see that there's something called Import Mail and Contacts. That sounds like exactly what we're trying to do. If we click on that, you'll see it begins a process of asking you, okay, where are you coming from? What is the email address of the account you want to import? In my case, I would enter my Hotmail email address and then continue the process. I'm not going to because I don't actually want to do this. This is not the approach that I recommend you take, but it is a simple approach, so it may appeal to you. Depending on the account that you're moving from and the account that you're moving to, if it even has an import function, you may get all of your mail, you may not get your folders, you may or may not get your contacts. This is kind of one of those scenarios where it really does depend on the characteristics of both email services, the one that you're currently at and trying to move from, and the one that you're trying to move to. But since this is such a simple solution, it is an approach that might be worth investigating. It's important to note that this is a one-time deal. You move your things. You're importing everything from your old account to your new, and then you carry on using your new. We have some more flexible solutions, a little bit more complicated, but some more flexible solutions down the road. But I wanted to show you this one because it is conceptually simple, and if everything works on both ends, you could be done. Like I said, it's not the one I suggest, and it's not the one that's going to resolve most of the issues that you might be interested in. So with that having been said, great. We've got our two email accounts. We've got our Gmail account ready to take become our new account, and then we've got the Hotmail account, the account that we're moving from. My preferred approach is more work. My preferred approach is that you download and install a desktop email program. In my case, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to show you doing this. What we're going to do is download Thunderbird. Thunderbird is the email program, the desktop email program that I tend to recommend. This will also work with a number of other desktop email programs, Microsoft Office's Outlook being the most common example. There are others. There are some where it doesn't work. I can tell you from experience that this does not work with the desktop email program that comes with Windows 10. So you're going to need to install something else. And Thunderbird, if you're not doing anything else, if you don't already have a solution that you prefer, Thunderbird would be the one that I would suggest. Given that the installer has begun, I'm going to go ahead and close those additional tabs because we don't need them anymore, and I'm going to minimize the browser. We may be coming back to that. I'm going to install Thunderbird. I'm going to always do custom. Let it install in its default location. We'll go ahead and let it install or create its icons. We'll let it use Thunderbird as my default mail application. This is up to you. What this means is that whenever the system needs to send email, be it because you clicked on a mail link on a web page or for some other reason, it will bring up Thunderbird. Right now, you may not have it bringing up anything, or you may have it complaining. This is one solution to that problem at the same time. So Thunderbird is installed, and we'll go ahead and launch it. Now, spoiler, I've actually had installed Thunderbird on this machine before, and you can see that it is already configured for my Hotmail account. It's the account that I've been using, if you will, on this machine. If this had been my day-to-day account, my day-to-day machine, then yep, this makes sense. Thunderbird is already configured for the account that I've been using and the account that I want to move from. What I want to do next is add the Gmail account. Now in Thunderbird, the way I might do that is to hit the Alt key to get the menu to display, and then go Tools, Account Settings, which now shows us all of these settings for the accounts we happen to have. Account Actions, add a mail account. So we are now going to add I am going to suggest that it remember the password for me. And since it is a long, strong, untypable password, I'm actually going to paste it from another window. Click Continue. IMAP. This is the important part of this setup. I strongly recommend that you use IMAP, and we'll see why here in a moment. Well, it's done. Gmail, because of the way Gmail does authentication, they want me to sign in again. Since I have two-factor installed on that account, I now need to respond to, or at least read, the message that was just sent to me. And that 6-digit code I just got on my phone is that. Don't ask again on this device. We need to allow Mozilla Thunderbird access to our email. That's what we're doing. It makes total sense. So we're going to allow that. Now what you'll see here is that we have two accounts. We have our askleo example at hotmail.com and our askleo test at gmail.com. If I close the account settings, you can see that they're both listed here. I have askleo example at Hotmail, and I've got this askleo test at Gmail. And look, it has new mail. If I click on that, sure enough, there's a security alert that says, hey, Thunderbird was just allowed access to your email. If this step had been performed by a hacker, somebody not authorized, that message getting sent to that account and to all the recovery email addresses associated with that account is an attempt to alert the rightful account holder that something is going on. Since I am the rightful account holder, yeah, this makes total sense. This is exactly what I did. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that message. Now, the magic. If we click on the inbox for askleo example, you can see that I've got my one message. You, again, will have hundreds. At least that's the setup that we were talking about when we asked the original question. I'm going to select that message. If I had multiple messages, I might do a Control-A to select all of the messages in my inbox. If I wanted a subset of the message, I could click on one message and then Shift-click on another to select a range of messages. there's a number of ways to select the messages we're about to operate on. Then, the magic. I'm going to click, hold, and drag this message from my Hotmail inbox to my Gmail inbox. Now you can see the message has disappeared from Hotmail. We moved it. And if I go to the inbox over on Gmail, there's the message. If I now go to the web-based version of these accounts, the web interface to each of these two accounts, you'll see that the message has disappeared from my Hotmail account, but it has in fact appeared over here in my Google account. I've moved all the messages. I have solved the problem. I have actually moved all of the messages from the inbox of one account into the inbox of another. But we're not quite done. Let's say we didn't want to move, but in fact we wanted those messages to stay in the original inbox. In addition, didn't want to move, we wanted to copy. I'm going to copy it back. I'm clicking and holding, and I'm dragging it over to the inbox for Hotmail. Now, I'm holding down the control key, and you'll see that underneath the arrow there's a little plus. That means it's about to make a copy of whatever it is you're dropping. Now we have that same message in both inboxes. Now at this point, you might consider yourself done because you've moved all your email messages from one account to another. Using your desktop email program, you can now continue to use both accounts simultaneously. You can continue to receive email in your old Hotmail account, the account that you're leaving, and you can then continue to use the email that comes and goes in your new Gmail account, the account that you're moving to. Now, in my case, I happen to have used Hotmail and Gmail as examples. They are just examples. This approach of using a desktop email program to move or copy email messages from one account to another works with any email provider that supports the IMAP protocol. IMAP is important because it will allow you to view the messages and the folders on both accounts and move the folders containing all of the messages. Remember I said earlier that the import probably is only going to move the messages that are in your inbox. This approach, using a desktop email program to move everything from one account to another, allows you to move the folders you want, ignore the folders you don't, move the messages you want, and so forth. The trick is simply that moving a message on your desktop from one account to another causes that move to also then be uploaded to the online account. That's why we're using IMAP. That's how IMAP works. It keeps everything in sync. So if you want to, you can continue to use your Thunderbird or your desktop email program as your email interface. On the other hand, if you don't want to, after everything has been moved, you can simply close Thunderbird and get on with your life using your new email account online. You've moved everything from one account to another. Now, I do want to take a look at a couple of other solutions that are less powerful, less elegant, but something worth noting. I'm going to go back to Gmail for a second to look at another approach to this problem. I'm going to hit the settings button, see all settings, back to accounts and import where we were earlier. You'll notice that there was a setting here called check mail from other accounts. Remember that I said that import, using import mail and contacts above, is a one-time deal. Check email from other accounts is ongoing. What this allows you to do is, much like we had Thunderbird configured to download email from my Hotmail account, we can now configure Gmail to essentially download or transfer email from my Hotmail account ongoing. Every so often it'll check for new email over on Hotmail and bring it into Gmail. You have your choice of whether or not you want to leave those messages on Hotmail or not, but this is another approach. It works as long as the Hotmail account continues to work, as long as the account you're moving from continues to work. Now, in the case of the original question, we're talking about moving from a paid account. So I'm assuming at some point you're going to stop paying for it. At that point, this approach will no longer work, and you'll start to get error messages when you no longer have access to that account. But it is an approach if you're going to keep the old account, or if you want to just keep sucking up messages as long as the old account continues to exist. So that's another approach to solving the same problem using Gmail. And finally, there's one other solution that I really dislike, but I have to mention it just because, worst case, if you're not getting a lot of email, you've got hundreds, but if you've only got one like I do, another approach, of course, is to take that message and manually forward it to your new account. This gets really cumbersome really quick, and it actually modifies every message, adding a forward header to it and so forth. I have to throw it out there for completeness because it's one of the things that people do think about when they are talking about moving messages from one account to another. Like I said, it's great for one or two where you don't care if the headers get mixed up, but if you're moving a lot of email and you want the email to remain in its original form, then yes, using either an import or a download or a POP3 fetch is the way to go. Now, what I need to talk about is what I'll call the fly in the ointment. One of the things that I have not talked about in moving stuff from one account to another are your contacts. Contacts are a problem. Now you'll notice that Gmail's original import mail and contacts claims to do contacts, and it may. Like I said, when I was talking about that, it depends a lot on the capabilities of the email account that you're moving from as to whether or not Gmail will be able to access your contacts and suck them up into your Gmail account if you're doing this with Gmail. In the general case, contacts don't work. They just don't. There's no automated approach to dealing with contacts that I'm aware of. It's the industry's dirty little secret, if you will. So the approach that I recommend whenever you are moving an account or have been dealing with an account online is that every so often you export your contacts and download them. In the case of Outlook.com, that's this people thing. And one of the options somewhere will be to export contacts, which is great. That is a way to then basically download all of your contacts into a CSV file, a text file, that acts then as your backup for your list of contacts. Even if you're not moving, you should do this periodically if you're using an online webmail interface. But the good news here is that some email accounts will let you import. So with Gmail, I have to go over to contacts, and then you'll see that there's an import function. And one of the options is to select a CSV. Now, this sounds all well and good. It really does. But, like I said, the fly in the ointment is that contacts generally don't work. This is where they work, kind of. There is likely to be data loss. In other words, there are going to be fields in the contacts that you've downloaded from your old account that won't import to the new one. Or names may get reorganized, or things may just be different. Unfortunately, that's the state of the art when it comes to contacts. I don't have a better solution for you, but it does let you get the main stuff, the names and the email addresses at a minimum, from one account to the other. But be aware that there may be some data loss that you'll want to probably manually clean up later. So I hope that was helpful. It's a complicated situation to try and move from one account to another. There's a real high barrier to entry to make this. I don't even want to say that it's easy. It's not easy. It's work involved, but that makes making sure you're choosing the correct destination all that much more important. And from my perspective, it's really an argument for using a desktop email program because, as you saw, we can move emails and folders from one account to another very easily. And once you've imported your contacts into your desktop email program, those contacts are then available to all the accounts that you happen to have configured in that program. So that's my suggestion. I hope it was helpful. For the original article on which this video was based, for related links, for comments, and much more, visit askleo.com/130388. I'm Leo Notenboom. Thanks for watching.